Hello students, I'm Dr. Gaurangi Bhatt here. Today I'm going to discuss Albert Einstein at School by Patrick Pringle. Snapshot supplementary reader in English for class 11th. Next slide. First of all, I would like to tell you about the chapter. This biographical extract describes the circumstances of Albert Einstein, the famous physicist, which led his expulsion from the school. The chapter starts with the disagreement on rote learning with his history teacher, Mr. Brown. He wanted to get away from the system of education followed in Munich. Finally, he decided to get a doctor's certificate, declaring that he has had a nervous breakdown and needs 6 months rest. Only his maths teacher, Mr. Koch, considered him a genius. However, Einstein could not use his medical certificate. He was asked by the head teacher school due to his poor conduct, so he willingly left the school and felt happy. Next slide. Now about the characters. Albert Einstein, he was not interested in the rote frank opinion. Nobody except his maths teacher recognized a genius. In the end, he was expelled by the school authorities. Next is Mr. Brown, Einstein's history teacher who believed in the rote learning system of education. Yuri, he was a good friend of Einstein. Next slide. Elsa, she was Einstein's cousin who advised him that he will eventually succeed if he continued in his school by giving the medical certificate. Next character is Mr. Koch. He was Einstein's math teacher who understood his genius and gave him the reference slide. Now I would discuss the summary of the chapter. First, disagreement with history teacher. Einstein's history teacher, Mr. Brown, asked him about the year of defeating the French by the Prussians at Waterloo. Einstein frankly replied that he did not see any point in learning, and learning facts was not education at all. He thought that ideas were more important than facts. He elaborated that he would be more interested in learning the reason each other instead of learning years or dates or which of the armies killed more men. Next slide. Second, we have Einstein gets scolded. Mr. Brown was to the school and ought to be ashamed of himself. The teacher suggested him to call his father and take him away. Next slide. Third, we have Einstein disliked Lawrence there. His landlady beat her children regularly, and every Saturday her husband, a drunkard, beat her. Einstein shared his pain with his friend Yuri. He was lucky to at least have his own room. Yuri also told him about the uncivilized students with whom he was sharing the room. One of the students got slide. Next, we have Einstein's cousin Elsa. Einstein told his cousin Elsa that he was doubtful about passing exams for the school diploma. They were more stupid than him and they all had passed the exam. She counseled him to continue studies in the school. Einstein told her that he was not at learning things by heart. He was reading a book of geology which was not even a part of diploma. Still, he was studying it because he liked it, apart from to stop. Next slide. Einstein's plan to get away from school. Einstein thought that it was meaningless for him to stay on in Munich. It was no use wasting it. Einstein wanted to get a medical certificate to show that he had a nervous breakdown and he should stop going to school. Yuri doubted that the doctor will believe that he would have a real nervous breakdown to make matters easier for the doctor. Next slide. Einstein gets the medical certificate. Yuri found suffering from nervous breakdown and should stay away from school for 6 months. Einstein thanked the doctor and took Yuri for a meal. Next slide. Einstein seeks a reference. Einstein told Yuri that he would slide. Einstein summoned by head teacher. Before Einstein had a chance to give the medical certificate to the head teacher, he was summoned to the head. Next slide. Einstein happy to leave the school. When Einstein heard this, he felt that he had wasted his time and effort enduring a medical. Einstein was tempted to tell that teacher what he thought about the school or about the teacher, but somehow stopped himself. Without feeling ashamed of being expelled and walked would be happier in Milan as it was a wonderful place. Thank you.